this morning. First up is Kim Fowler on behalf of the University of Canterbury Student Association, talking to item 10. She's online. Welcome, Kim. Thank you. You have 10 minutes, and that includes time for any questions and answers as well. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Tēnā koutou, thanks for having me here today. It's really lovely to have a chance to speak to you all. I'm here today to support the Free Fares campaign, but I'm really here to give you a specific insight to what this would mean for UC students. So basically, the reason the UCSA has got stuck into the campaign is that earlier in the year, we surveyed students to find out their perspectives on travel and public transport in Canterbury and Christchurch. Some of the context for this is that in the UC travel survey, which is a biannual survey the university does, I'll just get the numbers in front of me, but basically the main mode of transport that students use to get to university is car at 40%, and bus comes in very, very small at 9%. And so we really wanted to understand why this was for students. And what the sort of resounding response that came back was that students care about the environment and they want to use the bus. But if you own a car or you've got a car that you can use, it's cheaper and more convenient to drive in Christchurch, which I think a lot of us know. But for students, the price is a huge factor. So part of the reason we've got involved in the Free Fares campaign is that we've been advocating for a student discount in Canterbury to ECAN over the last few months. And it's really exciting that ECAN has agreed in principle for a discount for tertiary students next year, which is subject to their annual planning process. And the reason we've been advocating for this is that in recent research that came out of UC, surveying under 25s, so not quite students, but pretty close, it was found that implementing a discount would be the #1 driver to get more students on the bus. But what we heard from ECAN is that a bus discount is expensive, even though it will change behaviour, it will get cars off roads. So not only is that having a positive impact on the environment, but it's also likely to reduce congestion around the university for others who do need to drive. But we did hear that it was expensive. And so we've hopped on board with this campaign to ask the government to fund fares-free travel for under 25s tertiary students and community service card holders, because we think this will have a really positive impact on students. We think it will change their behaviour, which will be great for us all. And it's something that we've heard from students that they want. 86% of students do support fares-free travel for students. I think that's most of my spiel, but yeah, basically it's really important. I think it also the other factor of the argument, there's a strong environmental argument to fill our sort of reasonably empty buses in Canterbury with people who are price sensitive or would respond to fares-free travel. But there's also an equity argument. Introducing free fares would mean that there's less barriers for people to access higher education because there wouldn't be a cost incurred with getting to university. We heard stories from students who were, could only afford to bike when they did a survey earlier in the year. One student said that they felt forced to bike even when it was raining or they were injured, and some that came through are really heartbreaking. So that's why I'm really passionate about this. And I hope that you'll add your name in support because it's an awesome initiative.
Thank you. Kim, is there any questions? Jake.
Thanks, Kim. Hey, I'm wondering, you've been to ECAN and ECAN have said too expensive, essentially. And now the Free Fares movement is asking central government to fund this. Are you worried, or have you had any response yet from central government? And are you worried you'll get stuck in between two essentially funding bodies, both of whom are saying it's each other's responsibility?
Well, I think what's great about this is that it's a nationwide campaign. So it would be affected. The ask is for across the country, not just in Canterbury. So I think it would be very hard for central government to put it just back onto one council. At least that's my hope. Of course, that's always a concern, but really what's important is that we put many names behind it and get more people in support, so there's less chance of finger pointing, I guess. But I understand the minister's well aware of it at this point. So we're just trying to continue that push and gain broader support.
Aaron.
Yeah, morning, Kim. Thank you for your submission. So it appears to make sense, and the numbers look like they stack up when you get such good responses from the students. But often what people say and what people do, as you'll know, will be quite different things. So how long would you see this should be done if it was done as a trial? How long do you think that would take to see that an uptake? Are you talking months, 6 months, a year? What would be good if that was a first step?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what's important, we've talked about this. So first of all, I know that there's some modelling out in the public domain that was commissioned by ECAN on fares-free travel, and it was for everyone, but that should help to understand maybe what the behaviour change would actually look like rather than just survey responses. And I think I can find that it was in one of their public media agendas. The trial period, I think what's even more important is the timing for students of the trial rather than just the period. What's important is that we need a discount to start before February, so like in late January or early February, because that's the time at which we get the most amount of new students coming to UC. And so it's at that time where you've got students who've just moved down, they might not own a car, and you can start to build that public transport habit at that stage and contribute to long-term behaviour change, I think. So really that's probably most important, but maybe a whole year would be good. I think it will continue to have positive traction as more people respond to it, but it is hard to change that initial habit. So I think it'd be most important to target that key period where students are sort of new to the area and figuring out how they will get around.
Thank you.
Jimmy.
Thank you. Kim, one question, particularly regarding to your free bus fare campaign. You focus on a uni student or a tertiary student. Is focus on the undergraduate, those students, or including all those adult students, their age over 25 years age?
All students, because all students, most students, unless you're in very extraordinary circumstances, are likely to experience financial hardship. And I think for some of our adult students who have different demands around or different accessibility around what student hardship funding they can get, allowance loan, or maybe they've got other demands like raising children, it's still important. It's for all tertiary students. But the campaign does ask for community service card holders and under 25s too. But I'm here today to specifically talk about why it's important for tertiary students. That's who I represent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim, for your time.
Thank you.
The next deputation is from Lilybell Oakley, also regarding item 10. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Just like the previous speaker, you have 10 minutes, and that includes questions and answers.
Okay. Well, I'm here to speak as someone who'd greatly benefit from the free public transport. I am a student, I'm a community service card holder, and I also can't drive for medical reasons. So the public transport system is already very important to me, and it's not bad in Christchurch, but it's too expensive. Like on a good week, I might have $50 left over after essentials. A week of busing to uni would be half of that. And then on a bad week, I might have nothing left after essentials and then I can't bus. Now, I'm fortunate that I've got a decent bike which I can use to get around on, but that's not suitable all the time. You have bad weather, rain, wind. I've come off my bike in winter hitting an ice patch. I get 4 or 5 punctures a year from glass on the roads, which puts me out for a day and often involves a very long walk home. And then when I'm injured or sick, And a really good example of this is earlier this year in July, I actually got hit by a car and broke my nose, pretty battered, and my bike was broken. And I basically went home, tried to sleep it off, couldn't sleep because I was in pain, and the Panadol wasn't working. I had about three days of that. And then it took me another 3 or 4 days to find a friend who could give me a ride to the bike shop so I could drop off my bike to get it repaired. It was another week to get it repaired, and then another few days to find someone who could take me there to pick it up. Get it back, and I'm straight back onto riding, and it was terrifying. I was getting headaches. My head was going everywhere, just trying to see anything that could hit me. I was biking a lot slower, and I do Uber Eats by the bike. That's my part-time job. So I wasn't working that because I was too scared. It took me probably another month to adapt to that. And in all that time, in the time it took me to get back up and running, I felt pretty stranded at home. I used the bus twice to go and get groceries, but that was all I could afford, especially because I wasn't working Uber. And if I'd had access to the bus, if it'd been free, it would have been quite different because after I'd been hit, I probably would have gone to the hospital. I broke my nose. I took a pretty big head hit. I should have gone in and checked a concussion, but I couldn't afford that. And I wouldn't know, I could have called an ambulance, but how would I get home? And then being able to, at the very least, even if I didn't do that, I would have gone to the UC Health Centre the next day. I might be able to get something a bit stronger than Panadol to manage the pain and help with sleep. I could have taken my bike in myself to get it repaired and get it back. And I wouldn't have had to jump straight back onto using it full time. I could have worked myself into it and gone back to biking a lot earlier. It would have turned was basically a month-long ordeal into maybe a week. And I've got a bike. A lot of people who are poor don't. As I said, I'm on community service. I don't have a lot of money, and trying to get to uni without my bike, I missed 2 weeks when I got hit by the car. I did my best to study from home, but I couldn't make it to labs. I couldn't make it to group project meetings. We had to postpone those. And then when I could bike, we had to play catch up. And that bus would have been amazing for recovering from that. We've turned the whole ideal into, a few days off, maybe a couple of weeks not working, but it would have been a lot easier. Yeah, I think that's what I've got to say.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No. Pauline?
Thank you for that really heartfelt submission, Deputation. Are you okay now?
Yes, I've healed, I've recovered, and I'm comfortable on my bike again.
Oh, that's good news. Excellent.
Thank you, Lilibel, for your deputation. It was very powerful. Thank you. The last deputation is from James Curry on behalf of Generation Zero. Welcome, James.
Adam.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry, it's not what I've got written in front of me.
All good.
Welcome, Adam. You have 10 minutes, and that includes questions and answers.
Cool. Kia ora koutou, ko Adam toka ingoa, toka whānau tipunga ko Clay McLaren, ko Loch Lomond, iki puti rana, kia ora. I'm not gonna, I think that the last two speakers, Kim and was it Lindley, spoke much deeper on this and clearly than I can, but I'm from Generation Zero. And I'm just going to briefly just talk about, why it's really important that the Christchurch Council gets behind this and the importance of it. I mean, to start off with, we know across the world that free transport schemes have been incredibly effective in equity and in climate. We know that there's been considerable increase in patronage, both in terms of number of passengers and number of ships per person. You look at Belgium and you look at Templin in Germany, for example, they both had in excess of 1,000 increases in patronage, 1,000%, so 10 times an increase in patronage just from free fares, right? You look at The Hague, you look at Avestra in Sweden, you look at Chechnya, you look at the Netherlands, they had triple patronage rates. So in almost every jurisdiction, you've seen between 3 to 10 times roughly increase in passenger rates. So if we want to be getting people off cars, if we want to be getting people into buses, and if we want to be getting people into our city and making the city more vibrant and getting people in there, we know that free bus fares will do that, right? So start off with, we know that free bus fares are good for they're good for people, and they're good for people's equity, and we also know that they're good for climate. Obviously, they get people off the roads. We know that they get people off car use. There's really clear studies again across the world, in Estonia and Sweden, where car use decreased by 45%. If you look actually in Dunedin as well, there's actually some the university numbers, and in Dunedin, where I used to live in university, they reduced bus fares for COVID, and they also reduced it to $1. And then far more students actually got the bus into town and didn't drive, because often, if there's so many parks in Dunedin, right? You may as well just drive. But as soon as the bus fares became free, people really did get the bus. So it does make a big difference. There's no disadvantage for the council doing it. There's no commitment. You're asking for funding for the government. You're lobbying for funding for the government, as you see Dunedin City Council. We've seen other councils across the country who've all got behind this as well. And there is pressure on Minister Wood. Free Fares is meeting with Minister Wood relatively regularly, and he knows the pressure is there, but every council really is making a big difference and showing the government that, free fares is really something that we need to do for our climate. If you look at the statements that Christchurch City Council has made so often and often again about climate and the importance of emissions reductions, really not getting behind this would really be a bad look. And not getting behind what is really a clear thing. It's good for equity. As I said, it's getting repetitive, but it's really obvious, right? It's good for equity. It's good for everybody. It's good for vibrant cities. It gets people into cities. It's good for safety as well. It's good for all these things, and it's a really clear thing with very little disadvantage for the CCC to get behind. So I'm not going to, take up too much time. I've got other stuff I can talk about, but I think a lot of it's repeating what others have said. So it's also very popular as well. And I've got lots of stats here, but you've heard of that stuff. So, kia ora, Koto, you're keen to answer any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Jake?
Thanks, Adam. Hey, do you have a view in terms of who would ideally fund this? Central government, local government? Or would you like to see us fund even a localised version of something like this, as Dunedin have obviously done to a degree?
I think so. I guess the first thing, number one, is obviously just getting behind the free fares nationally, and ideally it should be funded by national government. But I think that, and if you ask for national government to fund it, that's great. But if the national government doesn't fund it, that's not a get out of jail free card to say it's not our problem. And so, while ideally, it should be funded by national government, if and at least until national government funds it, trials and being funded by local government is what needs to happen in the meantime. And so you see Wellington, for example, is having, I haven't got the exact details in front of me, but either free or cheap fares over Christmas. Obviously, Dunedin's done the $1 bus fare. So generally reducing bus fares as much as possible, lobbying lobbying to change the fare box recovery ratio and lobbying to get national funding. And that is totally our preference. But then until that happens, local government does need to step up and make bus fares as cheap as you possibly can or free in the meantime.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
Aaron?
Yeah, Adam, thank you for your presentation, and also we had one from Kim from the university speak before, and I asked the same question around a trial period, because you said you named some cities which are a little different to ours, but they had great uptake, 300 to 1,000%. It'd become a no-brainer if that was the case here, but the behaviour here seems to be different, so I think a trial would be more prudent. How long do you think a trial would need to be to make it successful? And I'm not sure if you saw Kim's. She suggested starting in time for a calendar year at university would make the most sense, and I'd have to agree. But what are your thoughts on a trial, and how long?
I think our position is the first things that a trial need to start as soon as possible. Was the first really important thing, and I think we've learned a lot from the Auckland trial for half price bus fares for community service card holders. And I think one of the biggest reasons the Free Fares campaign was launched was the plan is, in the draft emissions reduction plan, is for the Auckland trial is going for now, and then it won't be extended to the rest of the country. But in 3 years' time, when it's finished, they will then consider extending it to the rest of the country. We know that's not good enough. So I think that a trial will be really helpful. Starting as soon as possible, aligning with university dates could be really effective, and we'd support that. And I think it would really need to see the impact. A year or 2 years would be really what's needed. And I think we will see, and then we can see, the council can decide whether to continue or not. But a year or two and a half in review after that could be really good. But I think that the thing is getting it as soon as possible and ideally free if possible.
Sarah.
Thanks so much, Adam. I'm just wondering, there's talk of a trial and things, but I know we actually have a large group of the population who have free fares already, and that's those with super gold cards. The time is limited, but do you know the impact that made on the travels? My understanding is that it's been really successful and that people limit it to when it's actually free and don't travel at other times.
Limited to when it's actually free and don't travel. Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what you mean by limit, that last sentence. Sorry.
Oh, it's just that, people with access to that, so the over 65s, tend to only travel when they've got the free access to the bus, because actually it's not free during peak hours and stuff.
There's that they do. Yeah, so there's been a lot of evidence that it is that they yes, as you said, they have been travelling. I don't have numbers in front of me, but there's a really interesting report about that. And as you say, people, especially probably, and it may be different with over 65s because they may have more flexibility and the ability to travel off peak as well. But there has been a lot of evidence showing that people have been travelling off peak. Obviously, ultimately, though, we need free fares for on peak as well. So we need to be getting there. But in the Super Gold cards, it prevented 1.4 million car journeys in its first year when the Super Gold card was established. And 60% of Super Gold holders said they often or sometimes prefer taking public transport over car travel, and that changed dramatically. And so I think, and I've got the data here. 51% of respondents said it was now never true that they prefer to take the car. So it's not only actually getting people onto buses, it's actually making people appreciate buses and appreciate public transport and all the other social benefits that comes with that as well. So I don't know exactly about getting off peak, but the other thing I would note is that we do need on peak public transport to be free as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for your time.
You're right.
Okay, so we're going to move straight to that item